Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban. I'm a certified career executive coach, and what I do is I focus on career acceleration for evolving and emerging leaders. It's important to me that you remove those pesky roadblocks that are getting in the way of you achieving more influence, impact, and income. And speaking of influence and impact and income, today we'll be talking about resilience. And most importantly, how to fuel forward your career. Vivian Blade will be joining us today to talk about how to become resilience ready. So I'm excited to talk to you today about how to navigate these very challenging times and the shifting expectations of a successful corporate career. As you know, it's crazy out there. Let's just be real. It's crazy out there right now. So if you are interested in how to manage the crazy, come on in, join us for number 9 in the Forbes Coaches Council Spotlight series as I chat with Vivian Blade today. I'm very excited to have her on the show because she'll be sharing the highlights for her 2 outstanding books and one coming up. I think it's launching soon if it hasn't already launched already. One of those books is Resilience Ready, The Leader's Guide to Thriving Through Unrelenting Crisis. And I don't know about you, but the past 2 years are certainly applicable there. What we've experienced has been just this unrelenting pressure for sure. The other book is called FuelForward, Discover Proven Practices to Fuel Your Career Forward. She's also recently published an article, 5 Ways to Reduce Burnout, Boost Resilience, and Tackle Turnover. And some of these we'll be sharing as the show progresses and in the show notes for you to check those out and learn all about what Vivian has to talk about. It's a lot of deep, rich insights. And we're here to help you gain that resilience you need to elevate and reduce burnout and thrive through change. So if you're interested in what matters to increase your influence, you're in the right place. Okay. And if you're watching the replay later or listening to the podcast, give us a thumbs up or 5-star rating on your preferred app of your choice. Now let's talk about Vivian, our excellent guest today. She's recognized as one of Engagedly's top 100 global HR influencers of 2021 this year. Vivian is a sought-after leadership expert and thought leader. She works with the world's top brands, equipping leaders to build better, more resilient workplaces, equipped to thrive in spite of insurmountable odds. And like I mentioned before, her top books and one coming up. She's got her number 1 best-selling book, Resilience Ready, The Leader's Guide to Thriving Through Unrelenting Crisis, which reveals the key to living and leading with resilience. And if we aren't in unrelenting crisis, I don't know what we are in. And then one we'll be focusing on today is Fuel Forward, Discover Proven Practices to Fuel Your Career Forward, and reveals the inside secrets of career success. And her upcoming book, Influence, this lady writes. That's one of the questions I have for her is, how do you write so much? Influence unpacks how to scale the essential skill set for greater impact. So let's have some impact with Vivian Blade. Vivian, it is a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Hello, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here to share with your audience. Thank you.
How the heck do you write all these books?
I tell you, it takes tenacity. It takes resilience. I will tell you that for sure.
Yeah, I tell you what, this is amazing. You talk about resilience, and you say it takes resilience to write these books, but you have a lot of knowledge, and I just applaud you, number 1, for having written one book. And I know I have a lot of other books I want to write, and after writing that book, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this again. It's a lot. Yeah. And somebody's tuning in from YouTube from Virginia, Mary Amasuari. I probably mispronounced that miserably, and I do apologize, but thank you for tuning in because we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So, Vivian, what has inspired you to get into what you're doing now? Not only write these amazing books and share with the world your deep knowledge and expertise, but what has inspired you to do what you do? What's that passion? What's that spark?
I think ultimately it's the change that I see in others and the continued opportunity to make a difference in other people's lives. I started this journey, probably about 12 years ago, working on my own. But having come from a corporate career myself, working for GE and Humana, I had great opportunity to learn a lot about just being deep in business and deep business experience and get a lot of leadership and professional development training myself. So with all of that, I felt like I have a responsibility to share and to give back and to help other people to fulfill their dreams and be the best that they can be in their own lives.
I'll be honest with you. When I first started talking to Vivian about having her on the show, I was like a kid at the candy store. I was like, all these topics. What do we talk about? I want to talk about everything. And Vivian's eyes get kind of big. And she's like, wow, we can hit on some things because there's a lot of really rich information. So Vivian, knowing we're going through such a strong change cycle and we are experiencing things we've never had before, some of them are wonderful and some of them are challenging.
Yes.
Human beings don't like change, quite frankly. We're not good at it. We're in it and it requires resilience.
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you want to focus our conversation on first, knowing what's going on in the world right now? And then we're going through this thing called the Great Resignation. We're also going through, just big thrust into the future of work.
Yeah.
What do you want to share? Where do you want to go with this? Because, again, I'm a kid in the candy store. I don't know where to start.
That's great. Well, let's just start right there because everybody is going through such a tough time right now, and we have been for so long. And so let's just talk about resilience and what it is a little bit, and then we can talk a little bit more how to apply that to their careers and, even get into some of the FuelForward principles for career management as well, if that sounds okay.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah. I don't know about you tuning in.
Good.
Leah, Stacy, London, Carla, how do you guys feel? I'm excited. So, we're people are stressed out and burned out. We need more resilience, which I'd love to learn what your definition of resilience is, because I think people hear the word, but they're not really sure what that means to them, or is it true grit? What are we talking about here? I think it's more than that. Am I right?
I think you're right, Aaron. And I say that a lot when I do programs, speaking and workshops and things. We talk about what the definition of resilience is, and everybody has different experiences around resilience. But I'd like to share the American Psychological Association definition of resilience because it tells us that resilience is about how we adapt when we're facing crises, when we're facing change, when we're facing uncertainty. And so we build this muscle, the skill set, and we can around resilience, around adapting. And so that's really what I want people to keep in mind. It's not that we just have this pure grit to push through and charge through and have to show how strong we are, but it's how agile and how we can adapt to those situations and how we do that. So that is my definition of resilience.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because it is true. It's not just about having this grit and basically shoving yourself through this change cycle is awkward and can be challenging. It's being able to be mentally agile, being present. Mindset has a lot to do with it. So what are some key factors that if one wants to build one's resilience, what would you say to this individual?
Yeah. Those are some key things that you were just starting to mention. I discovered in my research and in talking to different professionals as I was getting ready to write Resilience Ready, that there are these key principles that help us to get to a point of thriving in our lives and to build our resilience around. And I want people to remember that resilience is not necessarily a single destination. It's not one single place that we get to. And we're going to go back and forth. Our resilience is going to shift as we go through different trials because no situation is the same. No crises, no challenge is the same. We also have everyday issues that we face. So in our personal lives, and there are surprises that come up at work all the time. And so how do we respond in all of those situations? So let's just talk about what some of these key principles are and what some of the things are that we can do to start to build our resilience, build that muscle, if you will, so that as we face those challenging times, we can respond in a way that doesn't keep us in as much of a stressed out situation as we may be in otherwise.
Right.
And, we're going to experience stress. We're going to experience some anxiety. We're going to experience some fear as well. But, if we can take a preventative stance and, again, understand and practice and build in some of these resilience principles, then that's going to help us as we go along the way. So what are some of these resilience principles and some of the things that we can do? The first one is perspective. You mentioned that in your comments there, Aaron. One of the key things we can do is have an optimistic mindset. I know for me, at the beginning of the pandemic, and even a lot of times throughout, when I was listening to the news a lot, and all we were hearing was how scary everything was. And now we've got the Delta variant again, and everything is scary again. And we don't know whether to keep masks on, masks off, go out, stay in, social distance, be together. And, sometimes you're in situations where you don't necessarily have a choice about being social distance when you're out. But with that, I know I was so nervous about just everything, and it put so much more stress on me. And so all that negative energy was taking its toll on me personally. I remember we were going to go pick up our daughter. She was living in Chicago, and she was going to come back here to ride out the pandemic with us, which we were excited about. But the morning we were going to go meet her, I remember being in my closet, getting ready, and my knees were just shaking. I was so nervous about going out and not knowing the uncertainty about what we would experience and run into as we were on the road. So I had to really collect myself, and faith is a big part of my life. And so just pray for God to protect us, one, and to help me to have more of a calming spirit and to see the more positive things. So, that optimistic outlook is so hard for us, but so important really as a starting point. Because if we don't have that optimistic mindset, it becomes difficult for us to move forward.
It does. It can become paralyzing. In fact, I'd love to hear from all of you tuned in. We've got some people tuned in from Atlanta. Carla Jones from Cypress, Texas. London Hicks, great to see you from tuning in from YouTube. Sally, Roberta, Leah, Stacy. We have a lot of people tuned in from YouTube today. Great to see all of you. And I'd love to hear from you. When you think about mindset, what in your inputs that you receive daily is impacting that perspective Vivian's talking about? Because I don't know about you, but I know for me, I know for sure, like the news is one of those triggers. No news. I told my husband, I said, you want news, honey? And he's big into reading the paper and getting his news. I said, you get your feed on your computer. I don't want to have been bombarded. That's what it felt like. I was being bombarded by this stuff. It wasn't even informative, really. It was just,
it's a lot of stuff.
And I'm a person a little bit more analytical. I like facts. I like to see research. I don't just want to hear someone's opinion about something. I'm crazy, but a little bit of a nerd that way. So it was that, and then social media became to the point where I basically got off Facebook, for example. I have a presence there, but I really wasn't interacting because there's just so much fear. And so, okay, I know I can only control me.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And having that perspective of, and it's not really, I don't think, Vivian, you're talking about stick your head in the sand optimism and ignoring the world. That's not what I'm trying to do. But it's knowing that what is the best thing I can take of what I'm experiencing right now. Like, what can I look forward to? What silver lining can I look for?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we have a choice about what we focus on. And what's interesting, neuroscience nerd, whatever we tell our brains to focus on, our brains look for more of that thing.
Yeah.
And this negativity is what? Look for more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So what is your other tip?
Right. Yes. And I want to come back and talk a little bit about how we respond to things and the types of fear that we experience. But perspective, then again, is the first resilience ready principle, and then purpose. Sometimes because we are so stressed and we're so focused on, again, the negative, because it's all around us, and we as humans, we can't help it unless we are intentional about refocusing elsewhere. So if we really think about what's my purpose, how can I really make a difference here and other people's lives, then that also takes our mind away from some of the negativity, and we begin to use our energy and, use our hands, use our minds in other ways. And you can see, all of us can see all of the need that has been in our environment over these past 18 months. And I think we've recognized it more than we have sort of in the past. And we have an opportunity to show up and make a difference in different ways than maybe we did before. And that's often what happens in a crisis or when we're experiencing change, is that needs change. And we may be able to serve in different ways than we may have been used to in the past. But we all, our mother always taught us that, and she always said to us, you were born for a purpose. You were born for a purpose. God made each and every one of us for a purpose and to make a difference in this world. And we don't have to be this huge celebrity who has all types of publicity to make a difference.
Right.
What we do for one individual, we don't know how that may change somebody's life.
Yes. Preach.
Yeah. And we can all make a difference.
This is so true.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting. I mean, you just don't know that. So social psychologists, I believe it's some social psychology, that's where it came from. They say that one person, even the most introverted person you'll ever meet, will impact over 20,000 people in their lifetime.
Wow.
So what you do, how you behave, how you respond, how you interact has much more impact than you give yourself credit for. So all of you tuning in and listening to the replay later, I want you to know that you have so much more influence and impact than you actually recognize. And the first step towards being able to leverage it is understanding you have it. Right? And what you do matters so much. So purpose, as you mentioned, is huge. And Carla shared something with us. She said job applications, for example, take time, including the research of companies, etc., seeing the rejections or not hearing anything, if ever. It's changing my perspective going back to work and what do I really want to do? So I hear, Carla, from you that sounds like you're struggling a little bit with keeping not only that positive perspective, but also a purpose. And having clarity around, is it really worth it? Is this really worth it? Is this what I want to do? So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about offline, about how maybe you can get some more traction with the more tactical side of things. But most importantly, I want you to know that the intersection of any next best step is where your strengths, interests, and expertise lie. Because if you can show up and be excited about it, that's where the magic happens. So,
Yeah.
and Stacy shared with us
Amen.
too, Vivian, and you might like this. She said, watching and listening to the news is something I've had to cut back on. Amen.
Mhm.
Become more selective in what I choose to take in, both information and entertainment. Yes, I hear you.
Yeah. Hmm.
I know it doesn't seem like it, but I'm kind of sensitive. Like this is hard for me to admit actually, because I pride myself on being very driven and go get 'em person. I'm pretty
Hmm.
sensitive, so that stuff impacts me.
Yeah.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Vivian?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I love the comments and appreciate what Carla shared about really trying to reset a little bit and figure out, what do I want to do? And I think
Mhm.
so many people in this time have come to those decisions. I heard someone talk about the fact that have been, of course, before COVID, before we were forced to be happy at home. We were just so busy living life and trying to make ends meet and taking care of our families and running to sports events and school events with our kids for those of us who have families, that we haven't really taken the time, like we've had been forced to most recently, to think about, is this the space I want to be in? I think that's
Mhm.
contributing a lot to the Great Resignation, where people are coming to terms with, is this the culture? Is this the type of organization? Do they have shared values that are important for me? Is this the type of work that I want to be doing? Does this fulfill my purpose in my life? So I think that speaks to what a lot of people are experiencing right now.
Right. And two, people during the pandemic pause, when we've had that time to
Mm-hmm.
kind of sit back and reflect a little bit on what we want to do with our lives and have a chance for the first time ever to take a breath, like,
Yeah.
oh, and then maybe some of us got a little freedom, maybe some of us were able to turn that commute into something else. And then these companies are like, yeah, that was great. Come on back into the office. And you're like, no.
Yeah. 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 We can have a whole conversation around that.
Oh,
Yeah, for
no. Don't get
sure.
me started. It's my
Hmm.
little soapbox right
Yeah.
now. But so this is great. So we've got perspective, we've got purpose, and I like
Right.
the alliteration. So is the next one a P
Yes.
too?
Right. The next one is also a P, and it is perseverance. And
Mm.
this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier, Aaron, about grit, which is important because we do need to have some of that staying power and ability to get through those hard times. But we also have to set the environment for us to be able to do that, because we know going through challenge, going through change, going through crises, going through the day to day, even at work or at home, is not easy. So if we take some preventative action to take care of ourselves, and if we help those in our organizations, if we're leaders, we can also make sure we're helping others in our organizations to take care of themselves as well. And carving out space, allowing our team members to have some space to be able to take care of themselves. So noticing the signs for ourselves and again for others, so that we know when we need to take a break. But and we hear a lot of this all the time, and it's been difficult. It's been difficult for me to make sure I eat right, make sure I get exercise and get out. Again, we talked about the things that we put into our minds as well, what we expose ourselves to. Sleep, getting enough good sleep when there's so much that we're worried
Yes.
about and concerned
Yes.
about.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get sleep when our patterns of our lives with everything happening within our homes has also been upset. Then, all of that we don't have normal schedules anymore. None of that is
There
working
is no
like we
normal.
want it to. So I know that it is not easy. And so start somewhere. Where's one thing that you can do to better take care of yourself? My mother, she taught us so many wonderful things, but she also taught us that, if you don't take care of yourself, or the fact that you have to take care of yourself first, if you're going to be able to help and take care of others.
Yeah.
So it's not selfish to take care of ourselves. It's actually honorable and honoring other people when we do that.
That's right, because you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear from all of you tuned in. What's that one thing? So take this challenge. What is that one thing that you can start doing? It's what I call micro habits to help you take care of you. Because here's what's interesting is you mentioned perseverance and then you mentioned self-care. It's the concept of slowing down to speed up. Because in order to go faster, we actually we aren't as productive, or we don't have peak performance when we're just churning, when we're in what in neuroscience they call a high beta state. So it's almost like I said, where you can't really focus, you have trouble, concentrating, your thoughts skip around a whole lot. And no, it's not just ADD. It's just this elevated level of stress and anxiety mentally. And we just don't take time to go, okay. Am I headed in the right direction? Am I doing what I need to do? Am I taking the right actions? Am I taking care of myself? So part of that perseverance is having a solid foundation to persevere on in the first place.
Right.
Because if you're eroding yourself by not taking care of yourself, then that's a hard ask. Oh, yeah, so you're sleepless and you're miserable and you haven't taken care of yourself physically, but persevere. No,
yeah.
Work that way.
You're right. You've got to have the capacity, build capacity. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's important that you've mentioned, Erin, is the fact that you talked about being very data-driven yourself. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you do around perseverance that helps us also to persevere is really take an assessment of the situation. Truly, what is it that I'm dealing with? And then what's one thing I can do to move things forward? What's one thing I can do? And it may not be the best next step. As I was writing the book, I had as the next step, what's the best next step or first step I can take? And when one of my reviewers, who happened to be one of my sisters, advised me that sometimes when we're in these situations, we don't necessarily know that it's the best step, and we can get stuck in trying to figure out what the best step might be for moving forward. But if we just can think about what is one thing I can do to move myself forward, then we begin to get some traction.
Right. Because otherwise we get stuck in analysis paralysis when we really don't get anywhere. Sometimes when you're at a place where you don't see the path, right? I've been there. It's scary for me because I'm a planner and I don't see the path. I have to trust and take a step, because sometimes it doesn't come clear until you take a step forward, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I see the options, or now I see the path, or now I can see, or we have to take a step and just be okay with it not being the perfect one. It's like one of my yoga instructors, amazing woman, Sarah Montross, teaches at Big Power Yoga in Houston, Texas. She teaches devotional flow, and she's been my yoga instructor for years. And she has always these pithy thoughts, these deep thoughts. And one of the things she said is, when you are in the practice, so what is practice? Life, yoga, doesn't matter. You're taking the right actions and disattaching from the outcome. Because there's a lot we cannot control. We can only control what we're doing. And we're showing up, we're taking the right actions, and then disassociating, not being overly attached to this perfect outcome. And I thought that was very powerful as an overachiever. Wanting to get everything right. Roberta shared something with us. She said, after a year of heartache, I begin each day with meditation and praying. That's awesome. Yeah. Clearing my mind to receive spiritual guidance. I'm right there with you, Roberta. That's very powerful. Hussein, who always throws me some interesting thoughts, he said, how can we avoid fatigue and reconcile job obligations and family bonding, as well as have special time to develop some skills with the acceleration of all the things around us, so everything that's going on, all this complexity, I would be finding that create that space is what I'm hearing Hussein say. Is it possible that there will be a sacrifice or a limited loss to achieve balance? So basically, what do you need to give up to go up? And that's what John Maxwell says. We need to, all great things happen, the pathway to possibilities is paved with trade-offs. And I may have misquoted him slightly, but that's generally what he has been known to say. And London shared that she's been literally blocking off time on her calendar for reflection and decompression for 2 to 3 times a week. So Hussein, that might be your answer right here. London is sharing what she does. And what do you think, Vivian? I mean, I know I have taken time aside. And what's very interesting is I have my Wellness Wednesdays. So in the morning, I focus on nothing but what I want to do that's fun.
Oh, awesome.
For 4 hours.
Awesome. Good
I give myself
you.
Until noon, and before noon, I can do whatever I want. I go ride a bike, I go for a walk, I can go see friends, whatever I want to do. It's usually something active because that's me. I want, I'll get out in nature and get some nature therapy. And what's interesting is I haven't noticed any loss in potential or performance at all. In fact, I get more done on Wednesdays than I do Monday and Tuesday.
I bet so.
So Hussein has an interesting point.
Awesome.
What can he do? With everything going on, he needs this time. Is there sacrifice he needs to make?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, I think you're right. There are trade-offs. There are absolutely trade-offs. But I think the other thing to remember is that we can also take little snippets of time because they also help to refresh us. So while we all maybe can't do the Wellness Wednesday mornings that Erin takes because we may have a certain work schedule that puts us in the office or working remotely at certain times, we do have more flexibility now, I think, with remote work to some degree. And I trust that our organizations and our leaders are recognizing that our employees need some of that flexibility to be able to determine for themselves when they need to be on and off the grid, when they need to refresh a little. But, just some breathing, getting out and taking a short walk, that 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, again, 1 to 2 minute breathing, even when you're sitting in a meeting. People don't have to realize you can turn off your camera for a minute, or we can deep breathe and look like we're still present if we're on camera. But even some of those small things matter. They matter. And if you can if you have family obligations or team obligations about what that does for you and how that helps to build greater presence and greater energy for you to do what you need to do, then they can be partners with you, which actually begins to take us into the next Resilience Ready principle.
Yeah. And Michael asked, maybe what are micro habits? So you mentioned micro habits. What are some examples of those? And I'm glad you asked because micro habits are those little things that are easily inserted into our life. We're not asking ourselves to redo our entire daily outline or routine or incorporate a Wellness Wednesday like I do. I can do that because I'm an entrepreneur and have a great deal of control over my own schedule. However, that's not available for everybody. So what can you do? What are those micro habits that you can do? So micro habits are little things, little decisions that we make every day, knowing that they are a decision and maybe we make a different decision. Like a micro habit we can develop is practice the art of the pause, like Vivian just mentioned. I encourage everybody to take at least 3 brain breaks a day, mid-morning, midday, mid-afternoon, and just for 10, 15 minutes. Reflect, unplug, don't do something that's also cognitively focused because that gives your brain a time to kind of dump the cache, if you will. It's a lot like a computer in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things going on. It allows it to refocus, right? And take a breather because if you're asking your mind to do heavy cognitive labor for hours on end, research has shown that your performance just drops after about an hour and a half, significantly after 2 hours. And you just don't get as much done. So give yourself a pause, and you can do a lot more for a lot longer. And that's my theory is why the Wellness Wednesday works for me, because I'm taking 4 hours off. My brain's like, woo! So micro habits might be choosing one thing instead of the other, choosing a banana instead of the candy bar. That's a micro habit. Yeah. So these are little decisions that we make that make a lot of difference. So that's an example of what a micro habit makes.
Yeah.
So you have another, I bet it's a P. We've talked about perspective. We talked about purpose.
Yes.
We talked about persistence. Was it persistence?
Yes.
Did I get that
Perseverance.
Right? Perseverance.
Similar. Yes. Yes. And the fourth resilience ready principle is partnership. And now more than ever, we need each other, don't we, to get through these times? And we have the phrase, we're in this together, we're all in this together. Mm-hmm. And there really is something to that. It's not just a catchphrase, but we are as human beings, we need people. Absolutely. And you have seen, we've seen how much we've missed people over the course of the last 18 months and how good it has been to be back in the presence of others. And one of the keys to partnership is to practice empathy. Mm-hmm. So I want to give you two things there. So one is to practice empathy, because everybody has different experiences. We're going through so many different things, and we can just connect to other people and listen to what they have to say. We don't have to have answers or fix whatever they're going through. But if we can be a listening ear and just be empathetic to what they're going through and respond with something like, yeah, that sounds really hard. I know that's really tough. And we can also be vulnerable sometimes and express what we're going through and have other people be empathetic for us. We all need that empathy. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is make sure you're reaching out to other people. Don't stay isolated, because that is, again, we're human and we need other people, and we have a network of family and friends who can encourage and support us. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you're reaching out to your personal and professional network. If you need professional services, that you do that as well. Reach out to what you need, that we are checking in on other people also, so we're not just waiting for other people to reach out if they need help, but we are proactive. And that we as leaders and employers are also proactive in doing a quick check-in, those touch bases with our team members, even without an agenda.
Just so especially without an agenda.
Yeah.
Actually.
So we can see how folks are doing. Mm-hmm. And they know that we care, how we really, really care.
Yeah. It's so interesting you mentioned just saying, that must be really hard for you, without having to come up with a solution or worse, make it your story. Oh, that happened to you this one time, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I get that a lot. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, let's make the story yours now. So you don't feel hurt. But when you're practicing empathy, it's just being that ear to be just holding what in the coaching practice they call presence. You're holding presence with that person. You're not trying to be a problem solver for them. You're not trying to relate your story to theirs necessarily. You're just holding presence. And partnering too, getting involved with other people. Maybe it's those micro habits Michael talked about earlier. You're like, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing, and it's kind of cool. I'm going to try to adopt these types of micro habits. Who's with me? Kind of get people involved. Carla says, she said, staying connected with ex-colleagues is helping me feel like I'm still in. I've also recently started volunteering with Houston ASQ. Yay!
Great.
To stay involved.
Great.
Feels less like being unemployed while staying connected. But that connection is so important. And Carla just shared with us a great story about how to do that. Volunteer. You mentioned something earlier, Vivian, about, giving back to the community, being involved. And I want to share, it popped in my mind at the moment and then I lost it, but I want to share why volunteering is so important with those people tuning in. Because it activates a part of your brain that gives you chemicals that actually makes you feel good. So yes, you're doing a wonderful service and you feel good at the end of the day. You're not only getting that in-person interaction, which is so important for our health and well-being, but you're also giving, which the act of unasked for kindness, kind of pay it forward, it actually is very rewarding. For us as individuals, because we're receiving all these wonderful chemicals from our brain. They're making us feel good. So that's a part of it. And you can connect to other people too. Yes. So I want to say hi to Susan, tuning in from Durham, North Carolina. And for any of you who just hopped on or just hanging out in the wings, know that we're here to help. If you have a question or you have something you're going through, share with us if you feel comfortable. If not, then direct message one of us after the show. We're happy to help. We're here for you. Okay. So this is amazing. These principles of resilience are really very powerful and strong. Thank you so much for sharing that. And of course, we've got a little bit more time left, and we definitely want to talk about how that might play into fuel forwarding in your career, or what that might look like for those people tuning in.
Let me, as we transition the conversation to fuel forward and career management and being resilient in our careers, let me mention the fifth resilience ready principle.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, there's one more, which is praise. And I say that because it is so important. And there are two things I want people to remember here. And one is to give yourself some grace. We are all working so hard over and above in our personal lives and our professional lives. And it's easy to beat ourselves up a lot of times. And so I ask people to recognize for yourself, as you give yourself some grace and as you recognize others, that you recognize two things. One is, what is the effort that people are putting in to make everything work? Just to get through, to be committed to work while also working at home and trying to manage it all at the same time. Mm-hmm. Yes. And to the accomplishments also, to even the small milestones, the small progress that we're making along the way. Discover what that is if you're a leader. Mm-hmm. Discover what those small, both the effort and what those small accomplishments are, so that you can say thank you. Actually, when I was at the SHRM conference, I went by one of the exhibitors' booths, and they were giving out some little things, and you play this little game, and actually I did a twirl the thing, and you get a prize. Yeah. My prize, let me grab it right here, is Thanks Matters. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I said, that is right on. Yeah. Thanks matters. It does. It's so important. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that, because we all need to give ourselves some grace and to others also. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Appreciation and acknowledgement is huge. And that's really, it's so important. From my years in O&D, culture development and transformations, and as a coach, I mean, I know that acknowledgement is key to human development, human interaction, positive cultures, just all of it. Where we really stink is giving ourselves acknowledgement.
Yes.
We don't do this. I'd love to hear from you, all of you tuned in. Do you do a good job of giving yourself acknowledgement? Where can you maybe find an opportunity to give yourself that, hey, you showed up, you did a good job here, or whatever that looks like. And I call it practicing being your own best friend.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Good. So that rounds out the resilience ready principles and can help us to overcome the three fears that I mentioned, that I wanted to mention: fear of uncertainty, fear of loss, and fear of failure. So, those can help us to overcome those fears. Mm-hmm. And to talk a little bit about Fuel Forward. And so a lot of Fuel Forward is about taking ownership and how you can do that of really managing your career. And there are all of these unwritten rules that happen because, again, going back to that human element, we're all people, and there are a lot of just interaction, human relationship types of variables that influence relationships, that influence our career. And if we're not managing to those, they manage us. So one, we want to be conscientious about our ability to have a foundation of resilience as we face challenges in our career and from the crises that we face to what we perceive as setbacks toward our career goals. Sometimes we need resilience there too. And so, there are three key accelerators for really navigating your career progression. And then there's the foundation of your execution. You got to knock the ball out of the park, right, on your performance, your execution. But to manage your reputation, be mindful of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And know what other people think.
Yes,
it's not about what you think.
About water cooler image, yeah, and getting some intel, if you will, on your water cooler image. That's still a thing. And then we can talk about any of these that you like. But the second is reach, and that really is making connections and making sure that people are aware of the value that you bring. So opportunities to share and to demonstrate your value, with broaden your connections to people so more people know about you. And then third are your relationships and managing all the different types of relationships that we have in our career, having those allies and advocates that can speak up on our behalf, those sponsors that we need so much. So those are the keys, and we can talk about any of those that you would like and that we have time for.
Oh, yeah. No, we have a few more minutes, and it's been a pleasure so far. I mean, I've had a great conversation, and I hope you have. And all of you tuning in, thank you for your questions and your comments. And as you do, tune in later, maybe watch the replay or listen to the podcast. Feel free to drop us a note, a comment. We're here to help. We want to make sure that you're thriving in your life and your career. So don't be shy and feel free to reach out to us. But yeah, I'd love to focus on, it's interesting, relationships. People are really struggling with that, because we are still kind of disconnected. It's not the way it was, and nor will it ever be back to the way it used to be pre-pandemic. That's just a major change in our social structures, how we interact, and how we develop our networks and our relationships. So what's interesting is, going back to the social psychologist again, they say the broader ties are extremely critical in your career development. While the close connections are important, the broader ties is really where it's at. It's people who know enough about you to recommend you, but don't know too much. To where that interpersonal relationship is complex. What if they don't like the job? Or, well, I recommend them, but they complain all the time. That kind of thing. So, so it can be, the closer you are with someone, the more complex it becomes. So those broader ties, developing those, and during this time, what would you say to those people tuning in? How to develop those relationships during what has been tough to leverage networks right now?
Yeah, it has. And, I would encourage everyone to go back and listen to your networking guest that you had recently. She talked a lot about how to navigate and networking in these times that are different. So I encourage people to do that for one. But know that relationships, they go through a continuum of first familiarity. You have to become familiar with people. Then we all are going to determine if we like somebody or not. That's just part of who we are. We make those judgment calls. So we have to be careful about that. However, I want to caution you about that. But we're going to do that as humans. So what do we have in common? So I encourage you to find what you have in common with other people. And then there is a level of respect that you have as you interact with each other more often. And then trust develops in your relationship. And when you do that, you can go from building acquaintances in a lot of your general networking, or as sometimes we're in meetings with people or see people when we're back in the office, maybe in the hallway or now on a virtual meeting that we don't necessarily have an opportunity to talk to. So those can be acquaintances, but we can use our reach where we are intentional about how we connect with other people to turn some relationships, not everyone doesn't need to be an ally, but allies help us in our career, help us to get work done. We also help others, so relationships are reciprocal. Then some of those relationships will turn into advocates, as Erin, you mentioned, where people get to know more about you and are willing to advocate on your behalf. And then we also have to be mindful of adversaries. We don't like to think about that type of relationship, but it does exist. So, thinking about the adversaries and how we manage those relationships. But, thinking about that. And again, using those opportunities with what I call intentional reach to connect. Where are environments where I can have a presence, where people can observe me, where I can interact and connect with people, and I can demonstrate my value. I use the term reach because it comes from an advertising term, which means the number of people or households that have exposure to a marketing message over a given period of time. So in managing our brand, we have to be intentional about our own reach to people so that then we have those opportunities to develop strategic relationships for our career.
Yes, that's such powerful insights. Thank you so much, Vivian. And I want to say, too, during this time, it's very challenging. Leverage technology. Don't shy away from it. While in-person connections are always best, leverage technology to your advantage. Don't shy away from virtual coffee chats. And when it comes to developing sponsors and allies, a lot of people are like, it's so hard. Either it's not available to them at their work, or what have you. Reach out to your professional organizations and start to build bonds. I know one of my good friends, Katrina Booker, she's a fellow board member of Women's Masters Network, an amazing human being and a wonderful coach. And she has what she calls her personal board of directors. And these are ladies from all different industries. They all have the same kind of general vision about life, career progression. They're very driven. They just get together once a month and just share stories, collaborate, support each other, co-coach one another, and lift each other up. And it's very powerful to have that kind of, you have those people who have your back, if you will. Yes. Right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be in your company. It can be external. It could be somebody who maybe not even in the same industry. However, if you're thinking about a career pivot, this is one thing that's new and trending right now, because we're in the Great Resignation. It's a very competitive job market. Everybody is looking. At the time of this live show, and I'm sure when the podcast airs as well, it will still be probably the same. So just keep in mind that when you're thinking about career pivot, definitely want to leverage your network and think about based on where you want to go, not just where you are, where you have been, but where you want to go. So if you want to pivot into a different industry or a different type of profession or niche, then focus on that and showing up there and starting to develop your network in that space. Susan had one last question, so we'll take this question before we wrap up. It's been a deep pleasure, Vivian, having you on the show. Thank you so much. It's awesome. Yay. And please do check out, connect with her on LinkedIn. Check out her website, which is vivianblade.com. You can find out all about her books there. She's got tons of information. I highly recommend reaching out to her. Susan had a last question. She said, what's the water cooler image? How can we improve that, and how is that image attained, maintained, and improved virtually? Very good question. Now, that's really what I wrote my book on, which is Elevate Your Career for More Impact, Influence, and Incomes. Talks about your presence, like how, for one, find out what your presence is, which is through feedback, ideally confidential feedback, because people won't be that honest with you, maybe face-to-face, or if you're asking it in person, although if you're really honest with yourself, you probably know what some of your habits are, and it's become a part of who you are, right? Well, I'm not a good listener. Okay, things like that we can improve upon. And get that feedback and then understand, okay, what's one of those micro habits that you can change, particularly one that's like a burning bush, like you're interrupting people a lot or what have you. What's that one thing that you can do to help shift that image? And just build on that. And that's really as complicated as it gets. Vivian, do you have anything to add to that before we wrap up?
Yeah, you're right. And that water cooler image is what are the things that people are saying about me and my brand in casual conversations and informal conversations? What's the buzz out there about me? And, we have to know that so that we can manage our own story and tell and make sure that there's congruence with what we want our brand to represent and how we live that out each and every day. So thinking about the micro behaviors that help us to demonstrate that. So I love that concept. Erin's great.
Yeah. It's much easier to insert into our lives and our careers than let's change everything. No, I had a client do that. I have to change all these things. No, you don't have to change all these things. Let's take some like small things and start there, and you'd be amazed how much difference it makes.
Oh yeah,
small things. It makes a huge difference. So for any of you that, again, have questions or more comments, if you're watching now or the replay later, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to comment here, of course, whether it be on YouTube or LinkedIn. We'll be happy to reach out, and connect with you, share our insights as much as we can. Vivian, it's been a huge pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your insights and your time and your wisdom.
Thank you.
And I'd love to hear more about your book, Influence, which is coming out when?
Yes, November 2nd, it will be available. So watch for news and information on that. Want to make that also a #1 bestseller. So would appreciate everyone's support and helping to make that happen. But yeah, so early November, Influence will come out, and it is all about how to scale your influence for greater impact. And just quickly, your scale principles and practices are your social capital, your courage, your authenticity, your leaning in with passion, and E is engage a diverse and inclusive community. So that's how we can be and become that person of influence. It's about how do you become a person of influence with that character, not just influence tactics that you employ.
Right. And Leah asked, can you find your books on Audible or Kindle? Where is that available? It's on Amazon?
They are on Amazon, currently available on Kindle, both FuelForward and Resilience Ready. Audible is coming for Resilience Ready. And as Influence is launched, I'll give you information on that. It will be available in Kindle. It will be available in hardback. And then we'll look to the future to get that on Audible as well.
So, yeah, I know. I'm still, that's on my to-do list for elevate your career for more impact and income, as well as getting the Audible version. I've had a lot of people ask for that, and I know it's much needed. But again, thank you so much. Thank all of you for tuning in, and it's been a wonderful show. It's been a deep pleasure to have you a part of it, Vivian, and thank you for your insights. And for all of you tuning in now and later, keep elevating, friends. Ta-ta for now.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Erin Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.